Van Dusen from Lance, and I'm talking today about the book Best Interest of the Student, the first 5 chapters that we had to read for this assignment. Sorry I can't be there tonight, but hopefully this works out for you. I'm going to first start off by showing you the 2 models that I came up with to help integrate the first 5 chapters, and then I will walk you through one of the models as I explain it in the paper that has been emailed to Mr. Lubig. So let's get started. The first model I came up with is the Best Interest of the Student Decision-Making Model. And it starts off with an issue that must be dealt with. Whenever we're talking about ethical decision-making, there is a student involved with a situation, and they must deal with some situation that has occurred. At the end state is our solution. So we start with a problem, we end with a solution, and this is kind of the path to get there. A couple things about my flowchart here. The things that are in square boxes are fairly concrete things that don't change very often. Such things as, is this a legal or policy issue? Obey the law. Is it in the best interest of the student, yes or no? And solution. If you look at the cloud-shaped areas, those are things that are a lot more fluid and change based on the community you live in and other things like that. Community is one of these cloudy issues. The reason community is on there is if you have a student who has got caught drinking in Ironwood, Michigan, that may be dealt with differently by the community than if that same student is caught drinking in Salt Lake City, Utah. So community can be one of those things that is fluid based on where you live. The one round section I have here is the ethics of the profession. The reason that one is round is because I have a mix of personal ethics, which people will take from their own experiences, along with some concrete examples of justice, care, and critique ethics. When you blend them together, we get a mix that is a blend of these personal ethics and these concrete ethical reasoning strategies. So that's my one circle, and that'll come into play a little later. I took the ethics of the profession one step further, and I made a small graph to demonstrate that because I found it so interesting. It's the only place where someone's personal beliefs kind of meld with concrete examples from our book. If you look at my model here, we have critique ethics, justice ethics, and care ethics all sharing an equal part of the circle. In the middle, we have a decision maker's personal ethics, which can shade either one of these different colors differently. The slide says, the ethics of the profession takes an individual's personal ethics and teams it up against the 3 ethical decision-making types: critique ethics, justice ethics, and care ethics. Each individual will have a different mix of these 3 types that will help mold their own values. An individual cannot have 100% of all of them. Instead, they will take sections out of what they feel is important based on their education and personal experiences. This model shows that an individual that relies more on care ethics, slightly less on justice ethics, and on critique ethics the least, determined by their personal code of ethics. I'm going to shift back to the best interest of the student decision-making model. Basing my conceptual model on the first 5 chapters of best interest of the student, I developed 2 main paths that can be taken when starting to deal with a student issue. The first question determines which path may be taken. That's this question right here. The question says, is this a legal or policy issue? From there, the decision maker will take their legal path, which goes up top, or the ethical reasoning path. In the end, both paths meet again when determining if it is truly what's best for the student. The only exception would be if it is a legal issue and a good law. In that case, the solution is determined prior to the best interest of the student. Very few cases run cut and dry like that. If a student came to school with a knife and threatened a student and there was no other factors involved, that could be a case where it is a legal issue, we obey the law, and it's a good law. But like I mentioned, most times there's something else going on that caused that student to provide that threatening behavior. The top path takes us directly to the law. If the law is a legal issue, then we must delve into the clarity of the law. Very few issues are clear-cut. In the book on page 5 it says, "There have always been actions on the part of school personnel that courts have ruled as legal, which other educators have criticized as unethical or simply bad practices." This is illustrated in 2 instances in the book. On page 14 there was a case where a student took a weapon from another student who was about to commit suicide. That student was expelled because the school had a zero-tolerance weapons policy. Using ethical reasoning, it appears that expulsion was the wrong decision, and not in the best interest of the student. In this case, it was a bad law, and the decision maker would have been putting himself in trouble if he had chosen to break the law and acted in the best interest of the student. He would have broken the law, dealt with the consequences, and moved over into the ethical reasoning realm. On page 37, the case is made in Cornfield versus Consolidated School District that strip searching of a student was legal. Again, using ethical logic makes the issue pretty blurry. Was the principal right for searching the student while he disrobed? The court says yes. Ethical thinkers may say different unless they are using ethics in relation to justice, which acts in the best interests of the most people. The second path takes us away from the legal issues and into the ethical reasoning spectra. The legal part doesn't go away. In fact, it restarts the process if the decision maker is willing to break the law on a law they feel is unjust. If they act in the best interest of the student and they determine that the law is not it, that will restart this whole process over on the ethical side of the house. The sticking point is where the decision maker breaks the law. They must be willing to deal with the consequences of doing so. The legal path also cuts back in ethical reasoning if the law is unclear on what to do. Ethical reasoning will differ from individual to individual. Different people will take more or less stock in the different ethical paths, as demonstrated in the Ethics of the Profession model. First, a person must take into account the 3 ethical decision-making processes: justice ethics, care ethics, and critique ethics. They must be blended with the decision-maker's personal ethics in order to establish the ethics of the profession. This is where a clash of ethical codes may occur between a person's personal ethics and the ethics they must use on the job. The decision-maker is not done yet. They must take into account the community. However community is viewed as a separate paradigm or part of a larger schema, as positive or negative, its influence on ethical decision-making is in schools may be profound and should never be underestimated. That's a quote from page 16. Again, an ethical clash of codes may occur between the personal ethics and the ethics of the community. Student rights, responsibilities, and respect also may play a role in determining the most ethical outcome. For instance, on page 24, the book says, although the students may have the right to free speech, they also have the duty to exercise the right responsibly. A few lines later she writes, therefore, although nonviolent protests are clearly a student's right, given the appropriate time, place, and manner, under the free speech clause of the First Amendment, bullying and harassing other students is not. These factors may be determined largely by a community and their feelings towards the school and faculty. The last but most important part of the decision-making process is to determine if it is best for the student. I placed it last because regardless of the process, the end state must be best for the student. If the decision made is not best for the student, I believe that the decision maker must go back to the ethical drawing board, and this circle will continue until the best interests of the student are met. With the exception of a good law, the best interest of the student is the goal. All the ethical decision-making processes are blended together with personal interests, community, and the rights responsibilities of the student. But in the end, the student must be the final focus. Thank you.